Hello, friends. We're going to talk about fasted running and give an overview of metabolism as it's related to marathon and ultramarathon running. Not really gonna. We'll briefly touch on distances shorter than that, but this is really kind of just to give a quick and dirty. I know there's a lot of text, but quick and dirty understanding of kind of what we're trying to achieve with a fasted or a low glycogen run, and what it means when that you see that on the training plan, and like give you the information you need to decide if you want to do it. If you want to do it, what options there are, and kind of just how best to build that into your program, when to do it, things like that. So, but before we get into the protocol itself, you just kind of need to understand what's happening inside your body, at least to a cursory level. So there's two main storage forms of energy that we have. One is glycogen, and then the other one is like adipose tissue or fat. There's various systems within the body that we break either glycogen, that's the storage form of carbohydrate. You break either kind of carbs or fat down into, eventually through various systems, into ATP, which then you use to do, that's what your body uses as energy. So where we store, so glycogen is really what we care about. When we're talking about kind of like race nutrition. That's why when you eat gels, they're mainly carbs. You're not really eating much fat, because even a really like lean distance runner will have enough fat for them to run, for a very, very long distance. There's a lot of fat stores. Fat is a much more efficient way to store energy, but it takes more process in order to release that energy. So for every gram of fat, you can get like 9 calories versus a gram of glycogen, you can get about 4. So now we mainly store glycogen, that storage form of carbohydrate. It's split between being stored within your working muscle and being stored in your liver. The majority of the weight and the majority of those calories are stored inside of your working muscle. Because then it's closer to the site that we need. And then when you run out, your liver then releases its storage into the blood. That travels through the blood, eventually ends up at the working muscle, and then you can use it. The calories that are stored inside of your liver are also used to fuel kind of other processes, mainly your brain, because your brain runs, unless you're like on a purely ketogenic diet, which we're not touching right now, but your brain runs strictly on carbs. So this is where you get that kind of fuzzy, if you ever haven't eaten for the majority of the day, or you get really deep into a race and you start to feel super fuzzy, or right after a workout your brain doesn't work. That's because you're running out of carbohydrate and your brain literally needs that fuel. So we store glycogen in the liver in a small amount. That gets dumped into your bloodstream, that gets circulated, used by your brain, working muscles, other tissue, things like that. The carbohydrate that are stored in your muscle, there's a much larger volume within of calories within the muscle, but it's used primarily just by the muscles themselves. So now, if we add together what's in your liver and what's in your working muscles, we have enough carbohydrate to go for, an hour 20, hour 40, sometimes we say an hour and a half, 90 minutes, before we have kind of depleted that volume, which is why you might notice when you go for a longer effort, you might hit an hour 15, hour 20, hour and a half, and then all of a sudden, oh, whoa, it feels quite challenging, and we start to like really need to either refuel with carbohydrate, or we really start relying more heavily on our fat stores. This is all also dependent on intensity. The higher in intensity we go, the higher a percentage of carbohydrate we burn. We're always burning a mix of kind of like a little bit of protein, some fat, some carbohydrate. The harder you work, the more carbohydrate you burn. The lower in intensity you work, the more fat you burn. So when we're training for like a long, slow distance event, teaching our body to become more efficient at burning fat is advantageous, because it's a better storage form and we have so much more of it. It's this super large volume of calories that we have that then can, through a slower process, but it takes more work for our body to release it, but we have this much larger storage form. And that's like stored within your actual like fat stores. And then some of it is actually stored as like droplets inside of your muscle. So there's a much smaller amount of fat stores inside of your muscle, similar to glycogen, right? So some stored in the muscle, both glycogen and fat, some stored in other places, either in the liver for uh, uh, for uh, glycogen or within just kind of general fat stores for fat. Okay, so if we can make our body more efficient at burning fat, then we can use less carbohydrate at the same effort. Or we can burn the same amount and work harder. So this is kind of one of the adaptations of training that we're trying to get. And this is why we consistently do long runs. And often in training plans, we try to set long runs to be about 90 minutes or more, because we can kind of push the body to that point where we've depleted glycogen. That gives the body a stimulus to next time say, oh, hey, I should maybe store more glycogen next time. Or it might teach the body to be like, oh, hey, I should burn more fat. I was really having to rely on fat this last effort, and oh man, I should like make more proteins that can help me with that, or that can help me with that process. Or maybe I should store more of these little droplets of fat actually within the muscle, and then hey, they'll be ready for me to use next time. And we give the body kind of prompts to adapt and to change and to become better at doing that. And that's kind of the purpose of these fasted efforts, is to instead of having to go out for like a 90-minute effort to put yourself in that spot, if we fast, if we limit the glycogen that we have stored in our body by not eating, then you hit that point sooner. So we have to do less work in order to get the same stimulus, and that is a really good advantageous effect. So that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish. Now the question is, how do we best accomplish that? So there's kind of two ways that we generally do this. They both work. One is more effective, but it also sucks way more. It feels gross. So both feel kind of gross. But so you can either just live your normal life, wake up in the morning, and then just go out for a longer effort. So hit that 90 minutes, excuse me. But then just don't have breakfast. So that's just a normal fasted run. That's what we would probably normally think about. This is really targeting these liver stores, because what's happening is over the course of that effort, your muscle, again, we have enough stored within the muscle to do that time, but we're going to deplete this liver glycogen. You're going to get this kind of bonky type feeling, right, in the brain. So you're going to learn to deal with some of that bonkiness. But your muscle glycogen is usually still topped up for about that 90 minutes. Now, if you go past 90 minutes, then now we're like getting into like actual depleted states, and hey, great, that's awesome. That's going to give you a really good stimulus. But you have to go past that period it takes for you to deplete this glycogen that's already stored inside of your muscle. And there's research to show that even these fasted efforts, that does increase the amount of this IMCL. It's essentially those fat droplets. It increases the amount of that fat that you actually metabolize. So this overnight fast totally works. Now, the theory behind the other one is essentially what we want to do is, instead of having to now fast, go for and do that whole 90 minutes of effort to get to that point where we're depleted, I want to start as depleted as I can, and then right out the gate, I'm essentially where I would be, an hour 20 into the run. So the other way is that we do a hard effort, you deplete the glycogen that's in your muscles, and then you don't refuel it, you rest for a period of time, and then you go out for another run. So what that does is, this is really targeting depleting the glycogen inside of your muscle, and thusly trying to get an adaptation at the site of the muscle itself. And this should provide a bigger stimulus, specifically kind of within the working muscle, which when we're training for sports and performance and running, that's really what we care about. So just overnight fasting does work, but it's not quite as effective theoretically as doing these carb restriction after hard effort. So this is the reason why this is what my protocol is. My protocol does involve an overnight fast, but it involves more than that. So this is kind of the first decision to make. If you want to try this, try an overnight fast first. It's probably a good first step. If you're training for like a really long event, you could try the harder one, or if you just really want to see what it's about and if you can tolerate it, you will probably get a bigger effect from doing this second protocol. So, second protocol is to do an evening workout, somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes of total time. Again, we want to get towards that 90 minutes so we can deplete the glycogen. Um, Inside of that 60 to 90 minutes, I aim to have a minimum of about 20 minutes of high effort. So this is about 5K effort or so. Or you could just do often like a 5K time trial. That's what we have in the plan. Is you'll notice that the rest week kind of ends with the time trial and then a fasted run the next day. So that's how this is set up: is to do your time trial, and then if you want, then you can follow the rest of the protocol. So inside either 20 minutes of that high effort or 40 minutes of like a medium high effort, which can be like tempo. We don't have to go quite as hard, but if you do 40 minutes at tempo within a 60 to 90 minutes, so that can include like warm up and cool down. If you do like a decent workout like that, you'll deplete most of the glycogen inside of your muscle. Now what we want to do is when we have dinner, we don't want to refuel, because if you eat a full serving of carbohydrate again, what's going to happen is over the course of you sleeping, your body's going to metabolize that and it's going to put that glycogen back into your muscle. So if we don't give our body that carbohydrate, it's going to limit the amount of glycogen it can put back inside the muscle. So I normally limit this to about 15 grams. And I've done even 5, 10, or 0, but I'd say 15 is a good maximum, and that's really just for practical purposes because it's hard to make a meal that feels at all satiating with absolutely 0 carbs. It's really, really challenging. So for me, this is like a cup of Brussels sprouts, maybe a quarter cup or a half cup. And you can always take, if there's like high fiber carbohydrates, you can always subtract the fiber from the total carbohydrate within your meal, and fiber helps you feel full, so stacking up on some fiber is a good thing. And then just lots of protein, just a ton of. I normally have like a steak and a quarter cup of potatoes, and that works for me. So then I'm going to sleep as normal. I find I really like what is that called? Not Fanta, the grapefruit one. I can't remember, but like an artificial soda, sweetened soda, helps me feel like I've had something sweet and can kind of satiate some of that craving, so I can actually go to sleep. So that works for me. So you want to sleep, and then in the morning you're going to go out for like 45 to an hour easy without fueling. So no fueling at all, no fueling before, no fueling during, easy effort. And that's if you're training for a marathon. If you're training for an ultra, you could push up to 90. I've done 2 hours fully fasted like this before, and it sucks. You're going to leave the door and you're going to feel you're going to feel low energy. Your brain's going to be a bit fuzzy. You're going to feel super sluggish. You're going to run slow. But the whole point is this is supposed to be easy effort. But we're in a depleted state, and what we're doing is we're really teaching our body to rely on these fat stores. That's the idea. Then what I like to do is after that 45 to 60 minutes, if I'm marathon training, or 60 to 90, if I'm ultra training, at that point, I start taking in race nutrition and teaching my body I'm in a depleted state. What happens when I'm in a depleted state in a race? Well, I have to teach my gut to kind of slowly take in calories again, and especially in ultra training when we'll have points in a race where you might go an hour, 2 hours without being able, your gut kind of sucks and you can't take in calories and you're like, oh man. But then you got to learn to get through that. So then practice your race nutrition when you're depleted. And this is a really good way to like learn to practice race nutrition. And then you can continue the rest of your run. So now we're getting that period of like depletion, and also practicing race nutrition. So and then just when you're done that, just be sure to refuel. Like you spend the rest of the day essentially carb loading and just refueling your body. What you're going to notice is when you wake up for that morning effort, that fasted effort, you're going to be literally like maybe 5-8 pounds lighter than you are, because for every gram of carbohydrate you store in your body, you store like 4 grams of water. So you're just going to you'll have ditched most of your water weight. And then you're going to gain all of that back, which is great because we want you to be fueled. So you can weigh yourself before and after. I always find that kind of fun to see myself like fluctuate these huge amounts, but and then it's just important to note, like, you can do this training. It's good, but it's probably not going to make or break your race, like your race performance. It's more really designed for like ultra training, and also if you're like let's say you're struggling to, I don't know, make the podium or get an age group award, and you've just constantly you can't find the thing that will really make it click. Sometimes doing a couple of these efforts throughout, I really like doing say 2 to 4 of them over the course of a plan. I would not be doing this every week. That's I would say a lot, probably too much for most recreational runners. I have done these every week for say like a 4 or 6 week period, and I found it did make me quite fit, but I also, I've been prone to burnout and things, and that might have contributed to it. So just be careful with it. But that's the protocol, that's the way, that's the reasoning. Yeah, there's maybe more to touch on with this, but we'll try to kind of keep it there. I'm trying to make these videos a little shorter. So if you have any questions, you can post them in the comments, or if you're in the group chat, post them in there. And I hope you have a great plan. There's another video coming just for adapting a subsequent phase based on the previous phase. So that's the next one that's coming up. I hope you have a great rest of your day.